Okay. Status. 5, 6, 7, 8. So thank you. We have uplink to the UU? Yeah, we're good? Okay, we're good. Thank you for making it here, Doctor.
Well, thank you for doing this. It's great to see you guys again.
Yeah, you too. The pleasure's all mine, though, because I love visiting with you. You're one of my favorite Pauls. And it beats the alternative.
Ha! Well, you're not kidding.
All right, so your new book, right? I've found it fascinating, and I found all your books fascinating, but this one I'm able to apply to my own life very easily.
Well, that's great. Thank you. It means a lot coming from someone like you.
And of course, I'm talking about the 7,412 Rules for Life, Anecdotes for Order. Um, I mean, I am just struck how I can almost take any of these short tips and apply them, and boom, problem solved.
Yes, well, what I wanted to do was take our most common problems and offer the most simplest solution, the most easiest to apply solution for people. After all, if a solution is complex, that just increases the chance it'll fail, and potentially make things worse.
Oh, definitely. One rule that I love, my family loves, is Rule 2718.
All right, that would be the marriage chapter.
Yeah. So the rule is no eye contact for 15 minutes after a bowel movement.
Right, yeah.
This is so simple and elegant. And for my wife and I, it's been wonderful. We used to use a toilet cloak.
Toilet cloak.
Yeah. So if we were going to the bathroom, we'd drape a sheet over ourselves.
How silly. So you would both wear a sheet?
No, just the person having the BM.
Well, if it works. And did it? Did it work out?
Yes and no. I mean, it gets pretty hot under the sheet, and the smell.
I can imagine.
Yeah. And we tried it the other way around, too, where the person not having the BM would drape a sheet over them.
And did that fare better?
Well, for us, it didn't. Both our kids are afraid of ghosts.
Oh, well, that's pretty common.
Yeah, it is. Why do you think that is?
Why, what is?
Why being afraid of ghosts is a thing. Like why does that exist?
Well, that's a good question. You'd have to dig down on that. Maybe you stumbled on the answer just now.
How so?
Well, maybe toilet cloaks were a primitive coping mechanism. And so people with sheets over them were associated with horrific smells and sounds.
Oh, yeah. Actually, farts could be where they got the woo from, because the acoustics in caves.
Perhaps. Maybe I'll do some research and include that in my next book.
Well, but yeah, that rule has changed our lives so much, and we thank you for that.
You're welcome. That's why I wrote the book. There's many people out there that created workarounds to life's problems, like you did, that themselves were just not ideal.
Yeah. When I was reading this book, I was actually making a list of my own rules that, maybe for my own book, or maybe they could be added to yours.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, for example, rule number 1, all poems should rhyme, right? I mean, you're not fooling anybody.
That's great. Well, expression and artistic endeavors work better the fewer the rules there are. But I like that.
But I think it kind of segues into rule number 2 of mine, which is we should all talk in a consistent manner.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is, for example, I know this guy. If I ask him about his dessert, he'll say, "Oh, it was so delicious, like a fluffy ice cream with pockets of blueberries." You know what I mean? You ask him about his electric car, and he'll say, "Oh, it was so cool, so responsive, with lots of gadgets." But you ask him about a movie, and bam, he turns into Shakespeare. I mean, I don't get it. It's like, be consistent. I bet you all those movie reviewers are just like my friend, right? They're normal people, but then they see a movie, and they're all like, sophomore penultimate tea leavened with indelible angst, understated and heretofore Humphrey. I mean, just be real, people. It's like, it's embarrassing. Like, it's not impressive. Like, we all have a thesaurus. You're not fooling anyone.
Well, I do tend to agree with you. Communication is a problem, especially today.
Yeah, I agree. And to some extent, I'm poking fun, but really, a writer's job is to communicate, right? Not to sell thesaurs or community college writing classes. I remember reading an article about a tragic fire in a building. I guess it was inside a building where there was like a lot of junk, lots of stacks of pallets and stuff. And the writer described it as a warren of junk.
Uh huh.
And it struck me like, why not just say a maze of junk? Like, everybody knows what a maze is. Warren is a much less used or known word, right? And this person, instead of communicating with the widest possible audience, they use the tragedy to push how sophisticated they are. You know
Uh
what I
huh.
mean? I mean, communication has value. Communication to the widest possible audience even has more value, especially when it comes to the need to know, the need to understand.
Ego.
Yeah, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent, but your book, one reason I really like your books are that they're so easy to read, very accessible.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that was my goal, to be accessible, to everyone. And so this book was really about strengthening yourself and strengthening the family unit. And by family, I mean the immediate household, including grandparents, but not extended family. As you might know, I've written quite a bit about extended family. In a previous book, Cousins, What Are They Good For?
No, I haven't read that.
Now, you, Paul, you're pretty far along, so I'm not really sure how much my books could help someone like you. And I thought a lot about that. I thought about it a lot. Do you know why you're so popular? I mean, is your audience, is it all males, or what makes up your audience? Do you know?
It's weird. I recently found out 99% of my audience is comprised of neighbors. So I don't know. I think maybe I'm the neighbor they never had.
Well, you're a strong dude, monstrous even.
No.
Yeah. I mean, you're tough as a bloody boot, a truth teller, which is at least part of why I think you're so popular.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I do live my life in a very determined way. Uh, I allow myself to fall down. The way I see it, it's okay to fall down. You can fall down 20 times as long as you get back up 30 times.
Well, you're tough, right? And I think your background as a stand-up and an MMA fighter have contributed to this. People see you as somebody who knows himself and is brave and is honest, and those are good qualities. Honesty is strength. You really remind me a lot of Paul.
And how have you been sleeping? I'm still having those episodes. The same dream again. He's called Rawhead Rex. He's like 12 feet tall. Ugly son of a gun. And I'm running in a forest. And it's dark. It's night. And I'm running as fast as I can. Sometimes I can see through his eyes, and he's running in the forest. And then I see through my eyes, and I'm running. And I'm stumbling, and I'm getting up, and I'm running, and it's dark, and my heart's pounding. And I'm running as fast as I can. Then I see through its eyes, and it's 12 feet tall. So his stride is way longer than mine. What could I do? I'm running as fast as I can. He's running faster. Every time. Every time he gets away. Every time. Well, that's nice of you to say. He's a man's man, very confident. I'm just saying, does she have to wear heels every time we go out?
Well,
I mean, if they sell lifts, don't they sell lowers? Well, I'm wondering if you, Paul? Oh, you're admiring my latest Rorschach, oil on canvas. I recently acquired it at auction. Is is it is it me?
Yeah, right. He is quite confident in public, for sure.
He once told me that small spaces are scared of him.
But but really, about you, I'm being quite serious. I mean, it takes a lot of courage, and perhaps you need to be a little bit insane to do stand-up comedy. In front of large crowds. Crowds are there for judgment, and that is very scary to most people. I mean, one heckler can get into your head and destroy the whole show.
It's not bad though. The thing about stand up is a lot of people don't understand this. Here's the deal. You go into a room and there's a crowd, right? And this is what you do. You find the biggest guy in there and you clock him. You just clock the peaches out of him, right? You punch a hole in him and you rip out his lorax. That's a thing, right? So, and you're not going to get any hecklers anymore, right? You've declared yourself as the alpha in the room.
That doesn't sound accurate. That's probably not correct.
No, I'm serious. What? Lorax. By a doctor. I was right.
That actually sounds like advice for a new prisoner.
No. I've been to prison. Not at all. So when you go to prison, you learn really quickly that these people are trapped there, right? They're caged and they're closed. They're hurting. And you know what? Laughter is the best medicine, right? So at brunch, inside joke for ex-cons, look, you just stand up on a table and you start telling jokes. Everybody wants to laugh, especially these people.
Wow, that's unexpected. I would have thought those were reverse. I think most people would think that.
No, not at all. No, I've been there. I've done it. I've seen it. I spearheaded Laughing on the Inside, which was a program to get more stand-up comedy in prisons.
Live performances?
No, it was just available on the monitors for them to watch in prisons. But, everybody loves to laugh, right? Everybody loves jokes, right? And it reduces stress, too.
Well, maybe most importantly, comedy itself is a toolkit. Its whole purpose is to make you see things differently. And I can imagine for a lot of people in prison, maybe a lot of them got there because they couldn't see something differently. Maybe something small early on that then snowballed into something that even they truly originally didn't want.
Precisely. Comedy is mainly about optics, right? Like magic. Make a negative turn into a positive or a positive turn into a negative. Essentially showing how much control you have on the situation because a situation is 90% perception.
Great framing, yes. We have more control than we want to admit.
Yeah. I mean, they say comedy is the best medicine is a cliche. And by the way, for the record, I'm not a doctor. This isn't medical advice. Like, if you think you're having a heart attack, don't start telling jokes. Call emergency services right away.
Oh, I didn't realize you were not a doctor.
Well, I used to be. I used to be a gynecologist. Yeah. I had an office over there on Main Street.
Oh?
Yeah. Gynecology by Paul. But look, I tell people cliches are cliches for a reason.
Yes, they are useful enough to bear endless repetition.
Right. There's a reason why we know today that 1,000 years ago, Mark Twain said, fight the enemy where they aren't.
I know what you mean, but it also helps to be a heaping spoonful of muscles. I mean, you know how to fight too, right? So being monstrous is useful.
Well, maybe, yeah.
Well, it helped you conquer MMA. I mean, you can't dismiss it.
Yeah, well, about that. I won a championship, yeah, but I never actually had to fight.
No? What do you mean?
Well, I was actually able to sue the league under what were at the time new ADA rules to force them to allow me to fight with my emotional support beard of bees. So it was mostly like, come at me. Come at me.
Oh, I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, they kept it pretty hush-hush. All my opponents forfeited. Under the settlement with the league, though, I could only be in the league for 1 year, one more year. Hence only one championship.
Well, I wasn't aware of that, but it still took bravery to sue. And, okay, well, I mean, you still have a lot going for you. I mean, you're acting. I mean, you're a jack of all trades.
Yeah, that's always been more of a hit and miss. I'm a method actor, and that's not always worked out to my advantage. Like in high school when I played Tree, or during the shoot of my autobiography.
Method acting didn't work for your autobiography? I haven't seen it. I guess I missed that.
It's not out yet. It's called Two Pizzas, a Pizza in a Pizza Place. So now, do you still see the guys professionally?
Oh, yeah, sure, from time to time. For interval, of course. I saw Dominic Paul the other day.
Oh, wow. He just came by here.
Oh, what was he wearing?
Just normal clothes? I bet he's pretty interesting, huh?
These hands have destroyed so many worlds. Does that make me evil? You can't even look at me. Maybe you should just get comfortable and lie down. This is a really nice couch. You must have a bigger budget. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. Oh, come on. You should see the look on her face. So, Paul, how does destroying galaxies make you feel? It's empowering.
Yeah, I know he's into that whole Far East Zen warrior thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you something since you're an expert on the brain and psychology. Is there such a thing as psychics? Because I think.
No.
Are you sure? Because I've seen some pretty freaky stuff.
No, not quite sure. It's just people using suitable averages and intelligent guesses.
Okay.
Do you want me to demonstrate?
Yeah, please.
Okay. And take note of how I get things wrong, but then I do careful repositioning to make my guesses appear closer to your answers.
Okay.
Okay. So, Paul, I'm sensing a powerful female presence in your life. An older female presence? I'm getting the letter M.
M. Mother. Oh!
No. That's not what I mean.
I knew it was real. You've been revealed.
No. I chose M because it's the middle of the alphabet.
You can't hide anymore, Professor
No.
X.
Okay, wait. I think I can shed some light on the dynamic here, on how what you call psychic is just careful observation in base psychology. So, would you do another experiment with me?
Like I could stop you from using your powers on me?
Okay, so I bought these with me. Here's a couple ink blots. Now, I want you to tell me what you see.
Oh, pictures.
No, they're Rorschach.
Hot cocoa. Look at the pear on her.
They're Rorschachs.
Look at the Rorschachs on her.
No. So, okay, describe to me with words what you see there.
I can't describe these. I mean, the UU would demonetize me.
No. Trust me. It won't get demonetized. Just use words to describe what's on the card.
I
Maybe that would be demonetized. I haven't seen someone have such a reaction to those since I talked to Paul. Yes, I was lucky to acquire it. As you know, Rorschachs on canvas are quite rare. Now, I wanted to circle back to something we talked to... Paul. Oh, I'm sorry. We had made a breakthrough last week, and I wanted to see if we can build upon that. I am so sorry, Doctor. I am ashamed and embarrassed. This is my private line. Well, I'm building quite the profile of you so far, Paul.
Uh-oh. This should be good.
I can analyze you a bit more, and if appropriate, I can shed a little bit of light on how a psychologist might interpret you.
That sounds cool. A little peek behind the curtain. What can you tell me so far?
I'd rather not. Let's see if we can get some better information first, shall we?
Sure.
What do you think are your good features for attracting the opposite sex? From before you met your wife, of course.
Well, like I said, I'm actually pretty good at poetry. So I
Oh,
have.
really? Wow. That's great. Can you give me a little sample?
Sure. Ways, how I love thee so. For when we break into song, waves consuming all I know. You're how I know I long. Lengths apart, I yearn to cut. As we grow near, I adore. For my sweet, upon light you float.
That's beautiful. Oh,
And my, about your popping butt. For when you dress like a whore, your boobs I wish to motorboat. Hearing you say that it was beautiful, wow.
uh,
It means a lot to me when someone like you likes my poetry. It's a Horatian ode, not very common. I can't wait to tell my wife you thought it was beautiful.
well, I think it would be more meaningful if we just kept that between us.
Oh, yeah, okay. So let's see. Did have some good pickup lines. In fact, I had a foolproof pickup line.
Oh, yeah? What's that?
So I'd go up to a girl and I'd say, "Sorry, I have a boyfriend." Oh, wait, that's your line.
That's really great. I like that. That's really good. That's very disarming to verbalize what they're already thinking. I like that.
But I was most popular with the women because of my massage skills.
Oh, I'm sure, Paul. Lots of guys think that.
No, really. You can ask my mom.
What?
Yeah, she bought me gift certificates for the Learning Annex where I took the massage classes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, she likes the full body deep tissue massage.
What?
Well, she paid for the classes.
Oh, I'd love to get you in my office for a few hours. I bet you're a real piece of work.
I don't want to brag.
Well, that's not a. Okay, let's go about this a different way. Can you role play a bit?
No, I can't. Like Dominic?
Oh, no. So you know about that too, huh? Yeah. When I saw him, he copied me. That was freaky. Yeah, and he likes his calls too.
Yeah, he did that with you too?
Oh, yes, it's true. I defeated them all. Con una sola mano! Pero if I must bare my naked soul to you, my totally naked soul, I see myself more as a lover? Oh, my dear, I did not mean to startle you.
But no, I just mean pretend. Put your mindset in a certain situation for me.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, so pretend I'm your child and explain to me where babies come from.
Okay, when a girl wears a bathing suit.
Oh, come on.
Oh, no. I mean a bikini.
Oh, boy.
Well, scientists aren't exactly sure.
No.
Well, okay, I was just messing around. Playing a part so you can make a point. you know. Yeah, I mean, I think we've all heard of baby vitamins.
Well, at least I could say for sure that your outward social behavior I've observed over time is that of a leader and not a follower. Would you say I'm right?
Yeah, I think so.
If your friend jumped off a cliff, would you as well?
Well, what's important to take away from this is that Todd jumped off that cliff on his own volition.
Going back to my book.
Wait. What at this point in the conversation, can you tell me about myself?
Going back to my book, I view it as kind of an antidote to social media, because we have less a sense of self, we're becoming more and more ill-equipped to interact with each other. And people should realize they need to go offline, go to the park, go on a hike, just disconnect, and everyone can benefit from that, even you, Paul.
But, okay, if I'm not at home, who's going to argue with James on Twitter?
Who's James, your friend?
No.
Someone you've met?
No.
Does he live nearby?
I don't know.
So he's a stranger.
A dumb stranger.
I am oft reminded of Plato. Wise men speak when they have something to say. Fools, because they have to say something.
I, too, am often reminded of Plato. To restore softness, try adding water one drop at a time and working in.
You know, sometimes I'm not sure if you're being funny or if perhaps you're actually just full of baloney.
I told you all those slices were stuck together.
It's always so enjoyable to visit here, to talk with you. I missed it dearly. We don't have very many comedians on our side.
Wow, well, thank you for that compliment that came out of nowhere.
So, Paul, I wanted to talk to you about something very interesting to me, a body of research. Have you ever heard of John B. Calhoun or the behavioral sink?
John Calhoun. I mean, it sounds like a Civil War general, or was he?
Maybe, but the one I'm talking about is an ethologist and behavioral scientist best known for his study on rat populations, dating way back to the latter half of last century.
No, that doesn't ring a bell.
He taught at many universities, also John Hopkins and Walter Reed, but much of his work was done for NIM, the National Institute of Mental Health.
NIM. I'm vaguely remembering a movie, like The Secrets of NIM?
Yes, movie? I believe it was, I would say, inspired around his notoriety, in the sense that the research on rats at NIM were so identifiable during that time, but I don't believe it was based on his actual specific research.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it was a cartoon, actually.
Yeah. Anyway, among his work there was a set of experiments called rat universes, of which he created many. These universes were spaces that had no shortage of food, water, or bedding, and there were no predators. The only limit was space. So they had everything in the quantities they would need as their colony grew, except space.
Okay.
He would start by introducing several males and several females to this space, this universe. And he, along with his researchers, would track everything. Consumption, mating, behaviors like grooming, fighting, literally everything. So, and forgive me for not having the precise numbers, but as the experiments would unfold, at first things would go quite well. The population would double at a good clip, and the social behaviors were normal for rats.
But it couldn't keep doubling because the space was limited?
Well, no, but the population growth started declining well before the amount of normal living space for the population was approached. So, for example, in his most robust universe, the population peaked to about 2,000 mice, but there was adequate space for a population twice that size.
Oh, wow.
So in these experiments, the only limitation, the physical dimension of the universe, never became an actual problem the rats had to deal with.
So why did the population decline?
Good question. As the population neared its peak, new behaviors began to reveal themselves. There was a breakdown in social structure. Females would abandon their young before weaning, or simply entirely.
Yikes.
Sometimes the females would attack their young. Non-dominant males rejected social interactions. There was a marked increase of pansexuality. And then there was this group that John dubbed the beautiful ones that rejected all social interactions and just stayed to themselves. They didn't attempt to mate, and they just groomed themselves all day. Hence, the beautiful ones.
This is fascinating.
Yeah, it is. What's most interesting is that these effects were permanent. So even as the population declined to, say, 100, where every mouse could have a mansion in terms of space, the effects continued. Even when there were 20 mice.
Really?
There were many of these universes made, and every single one ended the same way.
That is scary. So overcrowding caused their society irreparable damage?
Well, look, Many people used his research at the time to express fear in overcrowding because that's what it appeared to show. But John recognized this as a disconnect, that is not quite what it showed. And he later lamented that he couldn't get the correct message across about his research.
And what was that?
Well, from what I've read, some being John's fleeting comments and notes, it appears that, and especially because his universes never reached true crowdedness, I believe his comments on social roles are most relevant.
Okay, is this like Dunbar's number where you have
No, not really. No. Dunbar's number is largely irrelevant for 99.9% of the population, right? It essentially just describes an individual's limit of stable participation. There's some problems around that, and that it was extrapolated from primates whose social construction was, at least it could be, which to me is obvious, limited by natural occurrence.
Natural occurrence of
resources, habitat, food.
Okay.
Calhoun's research pointed to a much smaller number, something around 12 maybe, that represented important social roles. So think mother, father, grandmother, best friend, and so on.
Okay.
So it wasn't crowdedness. His rat universes used increasing crowdedness to bring into existence more frequent social contact. Calhoun postulated that it was likely just the increased social contact. And remember, they had no predators, right? No shortage of resources, and they never even got close to not having enough space.
Okay, that makes sense. So it wasn't the physical overcrowding.
Correct. And in my estimation, and I believe Calhoun's too, that overabundance of social roles degrades the value of all social roles.
What does that mean exactly?
Okay, well, so let's say this was 200 years ago, and you lived on a farm with your family, and you go to school a few days a week. Well, your mom and your dad and your siblings, a teacher and a pastor, maybe a few friends, all of them are, let's say, 100 power in your world. Let's say your world, the majority of your world is 12 people.
Okay.
Now, let's say today, you not only have, and this is important, maintain contact with friends from preschool, kindergarten, grade school, high school, college. That's in addition to baseball teams, football, tennis, and all that. And all your friends, all their siblings and their parents. In this environment, you can imagine instead of everyone being 100 power in your world, everyone's now maybe 70 power in your world.
Okay, but your parents are still 100, no?
Maybe not. Maybe because of your exposure to so many people, your parent, who's a good parent, right? And maybe they should be 100 power, but you've seen only the best parts of many other people's parents, right? And even though you might feel guilty, you begin to think your parent, who's actually great, could be better.
But that could just be an illusion, kind of like Instagram.
Right. Now, this is where I extend Calhoun's research. So far, we've talked about physical population density. And I don't know, do you know Simon Sinek?
Yeah, that name sounds familiar, but I can't bring him to mind right now.
Well, he's a cultural anthropologist and has some great insight on the effects of social media, especially on our young.
Okay, yeah, I've seen some of his videos.
Well, I believe some of his observations weigh on Calhoun's research. If you look at Calhoun and Sinek hard enough, I think a new idea can be extrapolated. Now, I'm not claiming I'm the first to see this, though I'm not aware of anything having been pointed out. But look, we're all familiar with population, right? It's a number. But does your mobile phone or social media use alter this number?
Oh, of course.
Right. So I have postulated that perhaps there's such a thing as effective population. So, like in taxes, you have a tax rate, right? Which is much like a population number. It's a known. But when you finally get through all your taxes, deductions, dependents, qualifications, all that stuff, you have a different number, right? You have an effective tax rate.
Oh, yeah, I totally see what you're saying. The population in America might be 300 million, but social media and mobile phones might make it effectively twice that or more.
Exactly. So we might be approaching quote unquote critical density, an overabundance of social roles, even in the absence of the normally causative physical overpopulation.
Oh, yeah, that is definitely what is happening.
One of the things that bolsters this idea is the fact that since Facebook opened access to their platform to the public, since that point in time, like 2007, the year after that, teen suicide went from a decline to an incline. And since then, it has doubled.
Doubled?
Doubled. So you have all children viewing false versions of others, vivifying false social role models, right? The one picture they chose out of the 100 they took with the best angles and the best lighting, then that picture is altered to look even better.
Yeah.
Then you add celebrities into the mix, showing off their lifestyle and their luck. And their luck is often disguised as talent, right? When you compare yourself to all that, it's not good.
No, it's not. You know, not to change the subject, but I can't believe in 2020, actors, these people, to everything is given, right? Much more than they've earned physically, that they still have the nerve, the gall, to have award shows. Like, what is that? Trophies?
And it's not even once a year. They're giving themselves trophies multiple times a year.
Yeah, what we reward is sick. It doesn't even make sense.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to derail your thoughts there. Sorry.
Well, okay. But I mean, just to add to that, your Hollywood, it's now more like a cult, right? I mean, there is a reason why everyone in Hollywood has a lockstep narrative, right? Cults have a lockstep narrative. I mean, look, they'll punish other states for not seeing things the way they want to see it. So it's not difficult to think they don't punish their own ranks for not lockstepping their narrative.
No, not at all. Especially when you frame it that way.
Well, and look, I'm going to be controversial now, if that's okay.
We're adults here, Paul. The way I see it is we cannot afford to leave stones unturned, right? And just like in nature, some stones are located in dangerous places, like on a ledge. But we still have to go get them and turn them over, see what's there.
Hey, I like that. That's a good way to look at it. Okay, controversy ahead.
Okay.
Okay, let's look back at the effects on the population near the peak and into the decline. You had females being essentially anti-offspring, right? So, of course, rats don't have birth control, but when they'd have offspring, they'd abandon them or even attack them. Females became very aggressive, right? Much more aggressive than normal. Now, in our society today, we see this lurch away from the exaltation of family and towards the exaltation of just a job, right? And we see a very aggressive feminist branch.
I would agree with that. It definitely feels like the importance of family has decreased. Jobs have taken a higher status. And I don't get it. Somehow selling insurance is more important than family?
Right. And now let's look at a big portion of males who have essentially removed themselves from society.
Oh, like MGTOW.
Yeah, and hikikomori. And we see today, whereas in the past, it was for a reason, right? Like towards something, like religion. We see today many young people, especially males, just rejecting being involved with society.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Now, in rat universes, there was a marked increase in pansexuality. And today, we can see an increase in, well, at very least, gender dysphoria. Now, without analyzing how much of that is real versus generated, we at least have to see this as having increased, right? Pansexuality, especially on the female side, is approaching topical mainstream.
Okay.
And I want to reiterate, I am being controversial, right? I am not getting into the details of right or wrong or real or fake. I'm just observing the prevalence in society. I hope that's understood. We're adults, right? We're having an adult conversations.
Yeah.
And that's important, right? I mean, if we're unable to have adult conversations, well, I mean, perhaps that is how the beautiful ones begin, right? Just turning away.
Yeah, some do take it as war, though. They're hurt by any notion, however slight, even in exploration.
It has to hurt if it's to heal.
To the winch, wench.
What?
Never mind. No, this is fascinating. I have no doubt that human beings, or any other social animal, like rats for that matter, cannot adequately consume an ever increasing amount of social contacts.
Well said, Paul. And to be more specific, to consume, right? Look, we consume things to become better, right? We eat to get energy. We read to get knowledge. Social contact is something we consume. And as we know, if we eat too much or eat junk, we become ill, right? If we read too much, we risk losing perspective.
You can read too much?
Well, sure, of course. Reading, after all, is a deep social contact.
It's a good point. I never looked at reading like that.
It's probably one of the deepest social contacts of someone you don't know. And that's why we tend to overweight books or reading in general. See, reading enlists you as an accomplice to the writer's agenda. It asks you to participate in the act of creation by filling in the gaps with your own imagination. So a book, especially a well-written book, becomes partly your own creation, a puzzle you help create and solve.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. So that's why people are usually more fiercely defensive about the books they've read as opposed to TV or movies they've seen.
Right, because they're partially defending themselves.
Oh, man. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, and they're more susceptible to adopt the writer's points as their own, or take the writer's findings as truth without question. And that can be dangerous. Essentially, we're using too many words, right? I think it was said best, everything you add to the truth subtracts from the truth.
Who said that?
I believe it was Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
I'll be back. Let some steam off, Bennett. Oh, well, look at that. I know more of his quotes than you. Wow. The doctor didn't know I was so adroit. Now, did you happen to hear about that writer? I don't remember her name. She was being interviewed live, and the guy that...
Oh, yes, I heard it. Wow, that was really something. But she handled it well, to her credit.
Yeah, so she writes a book, which is about to be released, and she's having an interview in England. And I guess her book, the main premise is that in Britain, the death penalty was used on certain people beyond a date at which it was thought to have ended.
That's right.
And she had based most of it on terms in the records of death recorded. But in the interview, I guess the interviewer did some research and found out that death recorded didn't actually mean executed.
Right. Apparently, at least. I've not heard what came of it.
It makes me wonder, by now, how many books are there? Millions? What percentage of them are built on a false premise? Or one false premise, but a critical one?
Yeah. And in a way, this is overabundance. The more ideas there are, the more books there are, the more code bases there are, the more channels there are, the more modes of contact, the less eyes and brains and time to apply due diligence to their accumulative amount of facets. Like even science right now, for all its great progresses, I think is forming into a house of cards, really.
Wow, really? Like how?
Well, you just had research around genes like SLC6A4 and 5-HTTLPR. We just saw 20 years of confident research, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of hours just wasted. It was all optimistically built on nothing that was credible. But at every turn, everyone thought they were being honest.
I think I saw an article on this is about a depression, right?
Yeah. And that just once again reaffirmed this really good article It was a few years ago. It was on Vox.com.
Fox?
V is in Victor.
You know Victor?
No, but Vox, VOX, everyone should read it. I think it was titled The 7 Biggest Problems Facing Science. It was maybe 5 years ago. And they talked to hundreds of scientists and they spell it out. There's an incentive problem, a money problem.
You sent that to me, yeah, a while back. I remember it.
Yeah, I did when it first came out. And it goes into peer review being broken, replication isn't being done, studies are poorly designed. So I have no doubt we're going to see many more things coming to a head, like SLC 6A4. People don't understand how fragile our credibility is right now. Like I said, it's a huge house of cards, really.
Wow. Ouch.
Well, it is what it is, And like I said earlier, how since Facebook, teen suicides doubled.
Yeah.
We don't know what we're doing. What we are doing is not science. It's manipulative. It's wrong. I mean, it's certainly not credible. That's for sure. Right now, all forms of science are just trying to amass enough non-credible or quasi-credible people together so that mass has the illusion of credibility.
Yeah, I was just talking to somebody about science, and it was almost like, well, not all of it, but a large portion of it is like this panic of just trying to keep this large wheel rolling.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're not doing peer review, if we're not replicating, if we're creating poorly designed studies, a large portion of what we think might be a delusion.
Yes, definitely. We have no way of knowing. Like I said, what we are doing is not science. And I'd agree, not all science. You could probably exclude astronomy and physics, but a large portion, something like 80%, maybe more.
That's scary when you think about it.
I think we're just too trusting of authority, well, the majority of us. I think when you look at the intense vilification of skeptics, that's probably actually a sign, a reaction of people, in their ivory towers, feeling like they're about to be found out, Back in the day, you could do all this practically in anonymity. But now it's your identity. It's who you are. It's your crusade.
Identity, yeah. We're actually just who we are. But when everything's instantly in the spotlight, nowadays, it's probably harder to keep things under control.
Well, yeah, nobody likes to make a mistake, but it's better to make one in anonymity, right? As opposed to the woman you were talking to, her name's on the tip of my tongue. But like her, to have the world witness it, in a world that still had peer review and replication, this would all be not as bad because our mistakes would be more easily found before we announce them to the world.
Oh, yeah, totally. So why are we allowing this to happen?
That's a good question. Look at wealth. When you were a kid, what could you possibly buy, right? Maybe a Nintendo, maybe a Walkman, some toys. You couldn't buy a laptop or a PC or a tablet or a smartphone because they didn't exist, right? There was no Amazon. So your ability to acquire stuff was inherently limited.
Right. And now we blow $1,000 on a laptop and $600 on a desktop, $400 on a tablet, $600 on a phone, $130 for data for the family plan. There was no way to even spend that amount of money back then, even if you wanted to, right? I mean, even if you had the money, all the cool things back then were impractical, like a personal submarine. It just, there was no way to get it.
Yeah, it wasn't realistically attainable. But now, how does all this affect wealth? Well, we have all these things, right? Even the poor among us have smartphones. They have tablets. That's access to the world that was not even possible when you were a kid. I mean, the closest thing was probably going to a library.
The library's in our pockets now. Everything is in our pockets. All the knowledge in the world, love, sex, hate, every movie ever made, every song ever recorded, thousands of games right here in my
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah. And every king and queen to ever live before you were born never had 1/10 of 1% of this. We are wealthy. We are very wealthy
Yeah, we are.
by all metrics, by every metric. Despite the world population tripling in less than a century, in that same time, everyone is better off by a huge amount, right? Hunger, wages, water, health, knowledge, all of it.
Yeah, this is off topic, but the other day I was thinking we should probably get rid of NASA, because the private sector looks like they have the incentive to monetize all that stuff on their own, and then with all that money that we put towards NASA, we can put it towards medicine, like gene therapies.
Gene therapies. Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah, it seems like that's probably the key to cheap healthcare, at the gene level. Because, it would probably entirely eliminate all the contraptions and time and stuff required to deal with all the other problems that a disease creates, right? That's likely what's expensive today.
Oh, right. Yeah.
But gene therapies are incredibly hard to find, and therefore expensive to find. And then when you finally do find one, you need to keep the lights on, and then everybody has a fit about the price tag.
Okay, yeah, right. So like gene therapies are the new moon landing.
Right.
Now that places like SpaceX and Blue Origin have surpassed NASA, we can hand off that kind of stuff, Look, our military doesn't actually build planes and tanks. We handed that off.
Yeah. And gene therapies are a complex nut to crack. But on the other hand, it might address 90% of medical care for 8 billion people.
Right, that makes sense. I'm not a medical doctor, but of what I do know, that seems rather obvious, especially now that you compare it to NASA. And like you said, private companies have incentive to improve efficiency, like how they made reusable rockets.
Yeah, exactly. We give NASA $20 billion a year. So, and there would still need to be, some minimal operating data collection, satellite controls, space telescopes, but they can buy them from private companies, just like the military does. Let's say you free up $3 or $4 billion, which that could then go into gene therapy grants.
Yeah. Well, I think another thing that needs to be reorganized, that's what you're suggesting, really, that would greatly change the world is education.
So like free education, I know that's a big topic nowadays.
Yeah, and I think like many other areas, education is not currently configured to become free.
Well, something needs to happen. Students are graduating with huge debts.
Yes, but I think education is 90% wasteful and ineffective. And handing out a blank check to that would be disastrous.
So leave it as is and just tell people not to go, or?
No. Well, okay. Do you think Harvard is a good school? Like, do they have good professors?
Yeah, I think most people would say it's good or great.
Okay. 4 million people graduate high school in the U.S. every year, and Harvard admits 2,000 students every year. That is 1/2 of 1/10 of 1%.
Wow. Okay.
What makes it fair? No. Whose interest is it in to educate 1/20th of a percent of high school graduates at Harvard as opposed to another college? Harvard's? The professors? The student? The countries? The world's?
It's a good question. I don't know.
Well, it's unclear. But if everyone on the planet can see all 24 Avengers movies, why can't everybody on the planet get a Harvard education?
That's a good point. That's a great point, actually.
Right now, you have a great professor and a format that allows, 300 people to listen to that professor, and each of them are being charged thousands and thousands of dollars?
Yeah.
Well, that's inverted. If you are concerned about the population as a whole, you don't ration a great lecture to 300 people a year. Instead, that professor should be heard by 300 million people a year who are each paying, say, 50 cents.
Yeah, right. Now it's almost like an artificially limited resource. So it's like a pay to play.
Exactly. Education should probably look more like an immersive documentary or movie series, where you can combine carefully curated ideas and messages with thoughtful animation and graphics, motion pictures. Leverage more senses for maximum input. And these ideas, these results, can compete. You can buy one or buy several because they're cheap.
Yeah. Right now, it does seem like an input problem, right? We're using our eyeballs to read words and look at whiteboards, and our ears to hear words, and our hands to take notes, all during a fleeting moment of time. It seems like a terrible way to like copy over or absorb that knowledge.
Right. It's a propagation problem right now.
So in your version, are the producers and animators, could they be students as well?
Well, sure. So these would be detailed, interactive, 10, 20, 30-hour-long edu-series, updated from time to time. Hollywood and Silicon Valley could be involved. They'd be available to anyone who wants to learn for a small fee or a subscription, and not just to those who qualify or cheat their way into the limited spots of Harvard.
But what about the professors themselves? I mean, they can help students in a class. I mean, that might not be possible online.
Sure, but you can field some questions and record the answers, right? Or you can have, like, at any time linked to the time of the video, a relevant FAQ on the side, right? Because people largely have the same questions. And also, you have the gig economy, right? That could bloom, or better or past students can tutor the newer ones, either online or remotely or in person.
Oh, sure. Totally. Yeah.
Right now, the most valuable information is being hoarded like diamonds and sold for exorbitant prices in a sort of pay-to-play scheme. If your goal is to educate the populace, what you have right now is not the way to do it.
But what if, like, what if all college was just free for everyone?
Still, though, right now only so many people can fit into a classroom or even fit onto a campus. And who gets to go to Harvard? I mean, how is that fair? If only a few people have access to quality, how is that equality?
Another great point. I mean, since it's being artificially limited, moving people around rooms is how we did it 200 years ago. It's like we're purposely not using any advancements for this area.
It's expensive to move and live there.
Heck yeah, that's part of the problem.
It's simply inverted. I mean, right now they're selling education as if it's a finite resource, like stocks or gold. But you have the ability to make education more like, books or movies or music, in a space like Netflix or YouTube, where you rent or buy a commodity. Making what you have now free is like giving up. It's several magnitudes higher in cost for several magnitudes lower in value. It's stupid.
Yeah, the way you describe it, it does seem wasteful. And it's so expensive. I mean, too expensive for something so wasteful. It's almost like we're spending a lot of money to keep ourselves ignorant.
Yes. In 20 years from now, I think you'll look back and laugh at how silly your current setup is. There are still some types of paradigms that it kind of works, but I mean, not the humanities, right? I mean, that doesn't need a class setting. And they, for the most part, they're just out there. But I mean, look, even Musk taught himself rockets. I mean, and did you hear about that single mother and her kids that built the house after watching YouTube videos?
Oh, yeah, I did. I think Jaime sent that to me.
So it's certainly possible. And we're not even trying right now. I mean, look at how much information people can get from Avengers movies, right? They detail it all out on YouTube. Millions of hours inspecting and theorizing, and they remember it all. So transferring information in an immersive way especially in an entertaining way, it's all been proven, right? In my estimation.
Okay, but what about labs and more complex things like robotics or medical?
Well, I think separately, there will need to be specialized centers for this, perhaps connected with industry or even specific large corporations. So, special labs might be part of an apprenticeship program for an industry, not a technical college, but technical learning centers, funded by partnerships with industry leaders.
But how about medical?
Well, that too. I think right now, giving up 12 years of your life for the possibility of becoming a doctor is not optimal. We probably need something that looks like the online system I described, then after a couple years, used in conjunctions with paid internships earlier on.
So correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds to me like you're saying that you want everyone to have the greatest education they can have
Right.
and have it be inexpensive, but that simply making today's colleges free wouldn't achieve that.
Yeah, I believe it won't. And again, if you just made it free, you'd probably have to implement price controls or wage controls at the very least. And there would probably be little incentive for risk expansion.
If older people, like parents, could essentially get a Harvard level education from home, that'd be huge.
Yeah, at any time, any of us have inexpensive access to any education we want. That's empowerment.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to single out Harvard. I think we'd see a lot of individuals and companies set up to create valuable educational experiences. I mean, again, look at that lady, the single mom that built the house.
Yeah, that's amazing. It took them a while, but they did it.
So now imagine if people put together a much more specific, say, 50 video course of house building, and it was free and had ads, or had no ads but was $20.
Yeah. So right now we're wasteful because YouTube is sort of chaotic. But if we put design and purpose behind it, more people could leverage that information more easily. I mean, the progressive in me, I can't say what you described isn't better than what we have now. I mean, I can't argue that more people shouldn't have a Harvard education. I mean, and it sounds like we can almost do that pretty easily.
I think so. It means finding our great teachers and making a platform that is part Netflix, part Khan Academy, part gig economy, maybe some VR. I mean, this could probably leach into high school too. And to show you what a difference a platform tool can make, look at Joe Rogan, right? He creates diamonds, great information, but then he leaves those diamonds buried deep inside mountains.
What do you mean?
Well, look, he has over 1,000 2 or 3 hour videos, right, with insanely great content in them. But even though he does well, most people will never hear some of that information in a purposeful way because it's buried inside great content, but not relative content.
You mean they aren't going to listen to the whole podcast, at least not a bunch of them, to find the diamonds that are important to them?
Right. I mean, how many people have time to listen to 1,000 3-hour videos?
Right.
So take something like depression, right? Who knows? Maybe Joe has had on 50 guests that have had really good insight on depression. The people that need to hear it aren't going to find all of them. They might find 3 clips and maybe listen to 1 3-hour podcast.
A lot of people listen to this podcast.
Yeah, sure, 5 million, 10 million, but I'm talking 200 million. See, the problem with YouTube, and especially long form, and don't get me wrong, long form is great. It's key to even reaching the topics that usually get ignored. But it's a double-edged sword because that content instantly becomes harder to get, because it's less accessible.
So you're proposing that, like for depression, Joe should curate all the best clips into a supercut on depression because people that need to hear it won't otherwise, right? Like or at least they won't hear anywhere near most of it.
Right. And I think, look, so think about the more directly valuable videos he could make from clips of a show. He can make a 3-hour supercut of depression, a supercut of psychedelics, of diets, of floating, of all sorts of things, aging. People that would never had been able to search through 100 hours of videos will watch that supercut, and those, see tens of millions of views, even hundreds of millions.
But he does have a lot of clips you can search.
Yeah, but they're not optimal. They're not conducive. It's a little about access, but it's more about curation. And it's about ease. People aren't going to find all 150 clips on depression. They might find 4 or 5. And hopefully those are the good 4 or the great 5.
Yeah, but Joe probably doesn't have the time to do that.
Yeah. But, maybe YouTube can make some sort of revenue sharing system between users, If he built it, it would be worth it. I mean, his curated content would see a lot more views than his non-curated content, for sure. And it's already captured. I mean, he just has to put it together.
Yeah, well, some of his videos get lots of views, like when Paul was on, but not many people are like Paul. I mean, he's very entertaining, because he's out there.
No, buddy. I'm not leaving here till you choke me out. Come on, one of you's got to choke me out. Really? Hold on, Joe. Hello? Hi. Did you remember to send the Webflick DVD back? No, we only have 2 out. I can't believe it. I can't trust you to do anything. Hello? Hello? I think he hung up on me.
Yeah, I bet he's a handful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's zip, zoom, fly, 5G.
Says here I just refilled your meds, but you haven't been taking them, have you?
You couldn't be more wrong. I took the whole bottle.
No, you didn't. I knew you were going to say that. That's why I bought these. Let me see you take one. I knew you were going to do that. That's why those were placebos. No, they're just sugar pills.
I know, I'm in ketosis.
But anyway, I'm just saying that is the next step. To take great but massively chaotic content and unlock it and optimize it.
Optimization. Yeah, that's kind of the theme here.
Yeah, I think so. I think capitalism has done really well, and we're now looking at an optimization problem. You lean to socialism to fill in the very last gaps, the things that fall through the cracks. But I think capitalism just needs optimization here. I think capitalism just needs a little more capitalism.
But this would mean less teachers are necessary, right? I mean, it would essentially be commercializing Harvard professors.
No, and again, I'm not singling out Harvard. I'm just trying to use something handy we're all familiar with.
Okay.
In fact, I would probably not choose Harvard's content today. Did you hear about one of the law deans and his wife? The law dean and his wife, I believe, they lost their deanship because he was going to represent Harvey Weinstein.
The producer, Harvey Weinstein?
Yeah. Apparently, law students at Harvard complained, and they just took his deanship away. And, man, I can't believe you're getting into this territory now, where perhaps having a Harvard education might be something of a negative label in the future.
Having a Harvard education might become a negative achievement?
Well, as far as I can tell, yeah. I mean, what you have are students, right? These are the future Harvard lawyers using prejudgment to reduce the options available to someone on trial. These Harvard students are the mob outside the jail that prejudged Tom Robinson and didn't want Atticus to defend him or for Tom to even have a trial at all.
Oh, wow, yeah. That's an excellent comparison in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Right, and it wasn't until Scout recognized somebody in that crowd that shame could be recognized. And in a way, it's those Harvard law students that should be named because they are somebody that should never be practicing law. You should avoid them representing you at all costs because they will take the law into their own hands. If they notice something about you, even if they're representing you, and they don't like it, even unrelated to your case, well, good luck, because little Mr. Justice Warrior is going to see to it that you're no longer able to affect his world in a way he doesn't agree with.
Yeah, it seems like everyone has a hero complex nowadays. But I can see their point, right? I mean, many people feel Weinstein's guilty. But I don't like people who use the slippery slope argument. I find it's overused. But for lawyers, not as idiot citizens, but law students, and for Harvard themselves to remove that lawyer's deanship, I mean, that is you're already slipping down the slippery slope.
That's exactly right. Are lawyers going to think twice about representing a client? Should lawyers decline clients because they are concerned about not being able to eat dinner in a restaurant the rest of their lives or getting their food spit in?
Yeah, man, it's crazy.
We're already abdicating our defense to somebody else, right? These lawyers. And now these lawyers might be abdicating our defense to a crowd?
Yeah, wow, exactly. Nobody would want that for themselves.
The moment a good portion of your country thinks that they're unable to receive a fair trial, like even just that only third-rate lawyers are available to them, right? That's dangerous. The moment that's realized, what's the point? Time for a reformat.
Yeah. There are a lot of people who try to make the Constitution say words that it doesn't say. But one thing it does say is that we have a right to counsel, right? Not the right to counsel of somebody else's choosing. I mean, it's kind of like, hey, we don't like you, so we're going to only allow you to pick from that pool of lawyers over there, but not those lawyers over there. No, just those.
That's the definition of putting your finger on the scale.
Right.
It's moving to dangerous territory. And I think there's a large portion of society that either don't realize it or a small portion of society that wants it to happen because maybe that empowers them somehow.
Like who?
Not sure. Perhaps the media. Conflict sells. Today, it's somebody you think is guilty, Harvey Weinstein. Tomorrow, it could be somebody you think is innocent on trial, but maybe they were wearing a red hat. So
that's another scary thought.
And I don't want to. I mean, look, you just can't, as outside parties, obstruct somebody else's trial. You just can't. But I don't want to make it seem like a trial's fair somehow. I mean, I think the structure of witness questioning and forensic science is deeply, deeply flawed.
Yeah, Paul and I just talked about the issues with modern forensics.
Witnesses are flawed. What we understand about memory is direly insufficient. Memory is fragile and complex and susceptible.
Yeah, we don't know a lot about memory, whole picture-wise.
Right, we know a lot about a little. And what we know is more bad than good in terms of reliability, and therefore credibility.
I'm fascinated by memory. In school, I did a project on memory and earthworms.
Oh, yeah, flatworms.
Oh, right, flatworms.
You did a maze?
Yeah, to see if memory could be transferred. So I made a maze and then trained the flatworms to learn the maze.
Right, and then you pureed them.
Yeah, I pureed them and then I drank them and I could totally do the maze.
You fed them to other flatworms?
No, I drank them and then I was able to...
Wait. The maze, was it like really, really difficult?
No, it was totally easy. That's science.
What is important is not the quantity of your knowledge, but the quality. You can know many things without knowing the most important. Tolstoy.
Oh, did you see the latest one? To infinity and beyond. Tim Allen is a national treasure.
Anyway, getting back to the topic, you know, the lawyers themselves, these are people who have honed their craft of persuasion and deceptive questioning over thousands of hours. To me, it is a bit amazing that we pit Joe Blow or Jane Blow against these people.
Yeah, well, they usually don't take the stand to defend themselves.
Yeah, but if your lawyer believes you're innocent and they're saying don't take the stand because he sees ways in which the prosecutor is going to eviscerate his client, you're robbing someone of using the truth that only they can know to set themselves free. I am not sure that that's desirable.
Right. Yeah. It does feel like this thing that you're just along for the ride. It's totally in the hands of these high-priced expert persuaders.
Right.
Who may or may not be relying on bogus science to back up their fancy arguments.
Right. Are we abdicating our ability to defend ourselves using the truth over to two word-wielding gladiators to perform theater on our behalf?
Yeah. That's a funny way to look at it, but it's true.
So, yeah, I think it's like we said earlier, we're all preoccupied with keeping this big wheel turning because it has momentum. It can't stop because there's this huge backlog of cases. And, are we checking our work well enough? I mean, are we credible?
It does feel like we're cutting corners. Yeah, I mean, there's quite a bit more than a few innocent people in jail, right? And that's not good. I think it's just crap that we ignore, hoping that we're never going to get dragged into it.
I think you're right. Like many other things. And again, like before, we're just trying to amass enough belief that it works often enough to convince ourselves that it's okay, right? That we're credible, that we know what we're doing.
Yeah. So now your lecture tour grew from your audience that listened to your university lectures online. But since you're no longer at university, you've just taken that on the road, right? Even to, I think the last thing I saw was you went to Great Britain. Is that right?
Yeah. It's really unbelievable. Australia, Europe. I just got back from Britain.
Now, did you have to learn British or did you already speak it?
For my talk in Britain,
Yeah.
they speak English, just like us right now.
No, they don't.
Paul, Britain, in fact, the entire United Kingdom speaks English.
No, I don't think so, Jordan. Trust me. I've seen About a Boy like 3 times.
Well, this audience happened to speak English, so I got lucky.
Now, are these topics the types of things you talk about on this tour of yours?
Sometimes it's usually a short talk about my latest book, followed by a Q&A. Or many times I let the audience guide me on topics, that they want to hear more on.
And it's been working out really well, I hear.
Yeah, it's been amazing. At almost every single one of them, I get a standing O.
Oh, I had no... So these events are like rated X, or are they even rated?
What? No. Standing ovation.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, what am I thinking?
But, it's refreshing to have the opportunity to express new ideas. For a while there, I was inundated with people who couldn't get past my observations about lobsters and serotonin.
Yeah. Now, is that actually good? Because I've always just used butter and lemon.
No. It's a chemical in the brain. And I was just pointing it out to show how lobsters, being hundreds of millions of years old, serotonin is used similarly in both lobsters and human brains. And this chemical, in a big way, can drive our behaviors that some would rather attribute to something more modern, like Western civilization.
Oh, I see.
But getting back to my lecture tour, my books, I love exploring ideas and kicking them around. I do tend to focus on individual and family and community. maybe one could say things we've moved away from. And consider community, right? Let's say we defined community as 2 suburban blocks, about 150 houses.
Okay.
We might be talking about 400 or 500 people.
Okay.
Now take the economy of maintenance, right? Perhaps we can call it the economy of care. This might be lawn care, mowing the lawn or trimming the hedges. Pet care, trimming your cat's nails or cleaning the water bowls. House care, like sweeping and dusting. Mind care, like tutoring for children, or even visiting with adults nowadays, right? All sorts of tasks that require we have attention, detail, elbow grease, but not a 4-year degree.
Yeah, I agree.
So when looking at the community, it would appear that even within 2 blocks, there might be a lot of work that could easily be sourced from within that community.
Oh, for sure.
So our communities could be closer, and we could be giving people good paying jobs in our own community, right, at a proportional scale.
What do you mean by that?
Well, let's say you have a landscaping business, right? At some point, and we're not talking about ultra wealthy neighborhoods, although we could be, at some point it becomes a symptom of a problem if you are able to service 50 properties a month, but they're spread across 4 or 5 cities.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I understand what you're getting at.
So it would be disproportionately beneficial for a community, let's say these 2 blocks, to see if anybody there wants to put together a yard service. And they do all the yards, all 150, right? Or at least those who want the service, which might be a decent amount.
Well, I can say for sure you'd be able to charge less than the person going to 4 other cities. I mean, you may not even need a car, really, or as much security for your stuff.
Right. And if it's community-based, you could foresee a situation where perhaps the community owns the tools or perhaps pitches in to get the people started, right? Like a low-interest loan or even let the people borrow or rent your tools.
Oh, heck yeah, for sure. You could even see people pitching in, giving their knowledge to the people doing it, like assuming they're younger and inexperienced. I mean, you have tons of older people that have built up knowledge about gardening or, plants in general.
Yeah, consider pet grooming. Maybe you have some 16 and 17-year-olds in the neighborhood that have a little service and they show up and they wash out all your pet water bowls and the food bowls, once a week or something. Maybe they cut the pet's nails once a month.
Yeah, totally. Even kids who are old enough to drive, they could pick up groceries, as a service for elderly people or the busy people in their community.
Right. Maybe apps could exist to do things like Uber and Grubhub for all these things we're talking about, but only connect to users in their community.
Yeah, this is likely how it all should have been done because as a side effect, you'll see people taking ownership and pride of their own community, which really means their neighbor, right? When you get right down to it.
Exactly. Neighborhoods right now, I think there's a growing amount of disconnection in the community. And this again is likely impacted by social media and mobile phones. And I'm not blaming them for this, but they make it easy to look outside ourselves or our neighbors to complex and wasteful solutions.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, elderly care, handyman, that would be a good one. I'm just thinking of all the similar things 200 houses would need. And it's probably a lot, right? Perhaps it's something you could do for 5 or 10 years, like from 15 to 25 while you're still in school or learning online.
Yeah, why not? It makes perfect sense, right? It's kind of closer to what we used to do as a community, 50, 60 years ago.
It's weird how things get organized over time. I mean, you think it would just get organized to be its most efficient.
I think things of scale eventually become efficient because there are large market forces that benefit. But smaller things, all new things form efficiently from chaotic organization, right? But it's only the large things that then flatten out to efficiency.
Chaotic organization?
Yeah, things form from a mix of chaos and order. That seems to be true. Things don't normally start as a part of a grand master plan, but rather come to form as needed. Or let's say when need becomes obvious enough to organize.
Okay, yeah.
And that grows and grows until the market finds its winners, right? And then those winners consolidate a bit, and then they flatten out and remove the chaos, which is no longer required, for the bottom line and all that. It reduces costs. A good example would be Amazon.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Once there is, say, a new technology, the process repeats itself.
I see that, yeah. Yeah. I wanted to circle back to something that you've been caught up in, that some people seem to have a problem with your assertion about hierarchies.
Well, it's not my assertion. I was just repeating what is quite old, verified, and known science, that hierarchies are naturally occurring. They occur in almost everywhere on Earth, from lobsters to rocks.
Rocks?
Yes, so I originally took heat from people when I was pointing out science that shows serotonin in lobsters and humans do the same thing and produce similar results in terms of behavior and risk reward. And this was in no way to suggest humans are like lobsters. To some extent they are, but rather just to point to the evidence that hierarchies are not something new, not something created by modern culture.
Right.
My point was simply, if we could see them a million years ago, how can they be newly created?
Right. That seems obvious, but rocks?
Well, sure. There's a hierarchy to all things. Take, for example, at a 40,000 mile high view, you have rocks, right? You have trees, and you have, say, some elements like iron.
Okay.
Well, those things interact with each other in a hierarchical manner. So we know you can take, say, iron and create a saw and cut down that tree, right? But we also know that that rock can break that saw. And still yet, we know trees naturally fall down covering the rocks so you can't get to them, keeping you from the rock.
Okay. Did you just describe rock, paper, scissors?
No, I'm not sure how you got there, but no.
I'm pretty sure you described rock, paper, scissors.
No, you're not listening. Look, let's make this simpler. Let's use everyday familiar things to make things easier to understand. So you have trees. What's an everyday item made from trees?
Paper?
Right. And then you have iron metal. So let's say you take a pair of... Oh my God, I'm describing rock, paper, scissors. Okay, well, that's okay now. But now when you add in hierarchies for animals, right? So now you have rock lobster. Wait, I must have skipped a step.
Okay, but the conversation about hierarchies is usually intertwined with so-called toxic masculinity and feminists who are ever increasingly calling for a future that's female.
Well, and there's something to that. Many women are delaying having kids, because they know better than nature. And we know that the later you give birth, the more likely the child will be female.
Really?
Yeah, it's something like 2 out of 3 babies are born female if the mother is later on around 40 and up. And I think the same thing is true for fathers.
Really?
Yeah, and it's never the other way around, right? So there's only a slightly higher chance the child will be male if the mother is younger, like 16 through 20s, early 20s. So if women are delaying having kids, then it could very well bring on a mostly female future.
Holy, I thought they were just joking.
Yeah, and that's probably evolutionary, I mean, I haven't looked into it deeply, but I can see how nature would expect you to start procreating closer to around when nature thinks you're ready. And males being generally more expendable, so waiting isn't in their interest. It could be that if you're having babies in your 40s, that nature figures, well, there must be some sort of problem in the population, so let's make more girls to give them more opportunity at producing offspring.
Oh, yeah, that totally makes sense. Right. So to nature, it's wondering why someone at this age is still, or thinks is still having children. So as a sort of insurance policy, it starts making more females to combat what it assumes is some sort of issue with
something the local population would be experiencing.
Yeah. Oh.
Nature doesn't survive 1 billion years being dumb.
Huh. Yeah. Well, Okay. All right. That seems like a good place to end this, my friend. That's 3 hours.
Really? It seemed like half that. Oh, we're on your cycle. Right.
This was really great. We should do this again, and not just for interval, you know?
Yeah, okay. Anytime. And thank you again for doing this, man. Thank you.
All right. How does dinner sound?
Sounds great. And thanks again. You coming with us?
Let's go.
Yeah, last time I was here. He told me.
Yeah, I don't even need the thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Damn, but a doom dang.